Alex DeRosier, he is a PhD candidate at CSU and also co-author for this season's Outlook. Alex, thanks so much for your time. Let's begin with the big driving factors for this upcoming Atlantic hurricane season. What are those factors?
Yeah, so there's two main factors that are warring a little bit and driving our prediction, which is for a slightly below average Atlantic hurricane season. And that's one, we are expecting an El Nino to develop by the peak of hurricane season. The open question remains, how strong will that El Nino be and how much will that impact hurricane season activity? The conflicting factor is that the Atlantic is incredibly warm right now, and especially come April, that's a predictor we really like to look at for what the upcoming hurricane season might hold. Now, granted, a warm Atlantic and a very strong El Nino is a rather unique scenario, but at this point, we are putting our eggs mainly in the El Nino basket and hedging for a slightly below average hurricane season and counting on a hostile atmosphere.
And when you talk about a warmer Atlantic basin, are there any certain areas like the Caribbean or the Gulf or the Central Atlantic that could be or maybe are favored to be warm?
Yeah, so the Caribbean's actually running closer to average right now, and the Gulf, as per usual, is boiling. But Gulf sea surface temperatures don't actually correlate long term with Atlantic hurricane activity in the same way that the Atlantic does, mainly because it's a big when will it happen game for when something wanders into the Gulf and if the atmosphere will permit rapid development in the Gulf of Mexico, like it unfortunately has recently. The main place that we look is the tropical and subtropical Eastern Atlantic out in the open Atlantic. Because those are going to affect the temperatures of the main development region where most of our major storms of the season will form come the peak of hurricane season.
You'd mentioned that it's a unique upcoming year because you've got an anticipated strengthening El Nino, but then possibly these warmer than average sea surface temps in the Atlantic. Are there any other seasons in the history books that correlate to this? And if so, what happened those seasons?
So every hurricane season is unique, but we do look for analog seasons. And this year, there's a whole wide group of seasons that at least loosely fit the bill of what we've looked at before. Some recent candidates, 2015 and 2014, did kind of trend along with what we're seeing this year, but so did 2004, which a lot of people remember that season as being a hyperactive season and one that wrought a lot of havoc to the U.S. in particular, with some major storms tracking through the Caribbean and Gulf. So there's really a wide gamut of outcomes when you start out April where we are now. However, we are continuing to predict a below average season in the hopes that a strong El Nino does develop, which makes the atmosphere hostile enough that it should knock down a lot of activity. But there is a lot of uncertainty this year due to those warring factors.
Okay, I've got to ask you, Alex, as co-author, you spent a lot of time on a report like this and a seasonal prediction. What is your favorite part to tell people about the upcoming hurricane season, and maybe for this year too?
So here is my favorite thing because it's the most important thing. We could predict one hurricane all year and be dead on, and that would be the most quiet season ever. But if that hurricane hits you, it's an active hurricane season for you. So the message with every April hurricane season forecast is you have time to prepare, so go ahead and do so. Go to ready.gov/hurricanes, get a disaster plan in place, be ready long before a storm threatens your area.
Alex DeRosier with Colorado State University in the Atmospheric Sciences Department. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.